Firstly, thank you so much to all our esteemed panelists. To dive into the discussion, Karine, starting with you. Highlighting your role and UNEP-FI's work, Karine, why do you think it's important for banks in the region to become a PRB signatory and then implement the principles? What role do you see for the PRB in driving progress towards the goals of the Paris Agreements and the Sustainable Development Goals?
Thanks, Nirnita. Okay, it's working. Hi, hello everybody. Hope you have proper time to eat healthy. So really nice to be here. Thank you, Nirnita, and my colleagues here. So, as you said, a lot of the discussions today, I think they covered a lot of elements actually of the principles for responsible banking. So we need to think that we have 6 principles when we look to the PRB, how we call it. The first one is strategic alignment. So we've heard a lot also on the participation of the boards, the chairman, the executives of the bank really driving and set the tone. The second one, as you said, is impact analysis and target setting. The third one is engaging clients, then engaging and working with stakeholders, governance and culture. How do we really integrate the change within the bank? And finally, disclosure that we also discussed this morning. So I think to your question, for me, the first thing is that the principles, they provide a comprehensive framework for the banks to really align from the top, but also to cascade down the change that needs to happen. So if you look to the 6 principles, if you look to the tools, the community of banks that are working to implement, and as you said, today more than 300 banks, the first thing for me is that it is a systemic framework that helps the bank to understand what are the key elements that need to change and need to be implemented so we can, as also Eric said in the morning, really promote a systemic change. So it's really looking to the business as usual. It's really looking to the portfolio and to the impacts that are connected to that and to amplify the positive impacts. So I think the first thing for me is, really they deliver a comprehensive framework. Then the second thing is, very shortly here, is also linked to the discussion today. It is an ambitious framework. Again, it's about bringing that to the core of the business. It's not to put, social and environmental topics and discussions aside of the business as an add-on, but it's really integrating. So this is an ambitious framework that really, asks the banks and the banks committed to align portfolios. So this, for me, this is the second one. And then finally, when you set your targets, you need to move the whole bank with you. So by setting targets, you put this thing into action. So I would say these 3 things: a comprehensive framework, strategic alignment and ambition, and by setting targets, you put that into action.
Thanks, Karine. So both Bank of Jiangsu and Mizuho Bank have signed on to the principles, and so coming to you both, to the banks, let's start by understanding what PRB means for your banks. Can you please recall when and why did you become a PRB signatory? Please also explain what is your role in the PRB implementation. Maybe Shanning, I can start with you.
Yeah, sure, of course. First of all, good afternoon. Very happy to be here to join the panel discussion. Back to Nirnita's questions, why we become a PRB signatory. My bank became a signatory in April 2021, but we have been following PRB since the very beginning. Actually, I was approached by the UNEP-FI to become one of the founding member of the PRB, but we turned it down, unfortunately, because by then we thought it probably wasn't really a good timing for us to do it, because the policy environment wasn't strong enough, and a bank as just on its own probably very hard to do it. Then probably most of you have already aware, China gave its carbon neutrality pledge in November 2020. That in March 2021, the carbon neutrality aspiration was formally written into the China's 14th five-year plan. So that means they become official. So then we realized, it's the timing for us to really, to adopt the PRB to help us, with our sustainability finance journey. So that's why we became a signatory in April 2021. And my role is actually I'm heading the green finance department at our bank. We, in order to implement PRB, so internally we established a task force, PRB implementation task force, and my role is also heading that, heading the secretariat for that task force internally at our bank. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thanks, Shanning. I think you've touched on two very important topics in terms of regulations and the importance of governance in the PRB journey. And so yes, Mr. Ozawa, if I could come to you.
Hi, hello, my name is Ozawa from Mizuho Financial Group. I believe most of the people in this room knows about Mizuho, so I'm not going to explain my company so much, but we are one of the mega bank in Japan, and we are the G-SIBs. Approximately 250 Japanese trillion yen of asset size financial institution, including banking arms, securities arms, trust and banking arms, and asset management arms, and also the research and technologies, probably one of the most comprehensive financial institution in global wide. And back to your question is that we signed the PRB back in August 2019 and became a signatory when the principle was launched in September same year. We signed PRB because we intended to introduce PRB concept or the framework into our management strategy in order to further enhance our sustainability initiatives more effectively and more substantially. In other words, we also considered it is important to expand positive impacts and reduce or avoid negative impacts on the economy or society or environment through our financings and other business activities as part of our value creation process. In response to our signing of the principle, we clearly defined that Mizuho will support our clients' SDGs or ESG initiatives because we deeply understand the importance of the magnitude of the indirect impact that we may cause through our business activities such as financings and investments. I believe there are 2 points to effectively implement the PRB principle. One is target setting. 2 is synchronizing the PRB initiatives and the management or the business strategies. To do so, I believe there are 2 aspects, crucial aspects. One is to collaborate with the other relevant in-house departments, such as frontline business departments, as well as the risk management departments. And the other one is to obtain the understanding from the management executives, executive managements. Thanks to our efforts for several years, backed by these principles, I believe we've been conducting pretty good progress so far. And the Sustainability Planning Department, where I belong, is responsible for formulating the group-wide policies and strategies related to sustainability overall, including climate change and human rights. It is our responsibility to implement the PRB, such as impact analysis, target setting, promoting initiatives, following progress, deliberation and reporting, and disclosures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ozawa. I think that's really interesting. I think both of you, both Mr. Shanning and you, talked about the importance of governance. And also, when we are talking about impact, so continuing with my questions to you then, Mr. Ozawa, another additional question is, can you please describe your experience with impact analysis? You already talked about how important this is in your bank's work. So if you could describe a little bit more on what that process has been like. And then again, after Mr. Ozawa, if Shanning, you could please talk about your experience. Thanks.
Yeah, impact analysis identifies the areas where the bank has economic or social or environment impact through loans and financings based on the characteristics of the finance portfolio, such as countries and regions or the sectors. Mizuho ourselves uses the portfolio analysis tool provided by UNEP FI to conduct the impact analysis. We analyzes the top 5 countries in outstanding loan balance: Japan, US, China, Hong Kong, and Australia, and the higher ranked sectors outstanding loan balance in each country. When we first conducted the impact analysis in 2021, we identified that the climate change is the biggest impact area. In last fiscal year, 2022, in addition to climate change, second biggest impact area was identified and will be disclosed probably in September this year. We are now in the process of obtaining a third-party assurance at this moment. And in addition to the PRB impact analysis, we also conduct materiality analysis as well. We use both as the basis for the formulating our management strategies and business strategies. Thank you.
Right. Impact analysis, the holy grail of the entire PRB, right? And also give us a lot of headaches, a lot of OTs as well. Right, so impact analysis is an amazing tool for banks to understand, the impact of their portfolio, the assets. Before we become a signatory, before we tap into the impact analysis tool, we also did some analysis trying to understand our impact on the environment, but at the transaction level, individual transaction level. For example, we are one of the equator principal banks, so for all project finance or project related to finance, we also conducted risk analysis on the environment and the social space according to the IFC environmental performance standards. We did that, but we didn't have a tool for us to understand at a macro level, what the impact across so many aspects or so-called impact areas, 22 impact areas, as defined by UNEP FI of our portfolio. So impact analysis provides such an approach for us to do that. But there are some challenges as well. 2 main challenges I'd like to highlight. First one, the impact analysis tool provided by the UNEP FI banking team is an amazing tool, but it's prescriptive, So it had defined, 4 business areas, which is, the consumer banking, business banking, corporate banking, and investment banking. But, as a bank, when I look at, okay, how can I, allocate my asset into these 4 categories of, business, it actually not easy to do that, because some business we are doing, it kind of like can fit either of them. But, if you change the mix, then the result will change. So that's something we have to bear in mind when we do the analysis. The second one is the industry classification. You know, we need to split our assets into different sectors. The PRB impact analysis tool is based on the ISIC, the International Standard for Industry Classification. But our assets are actually, classified by the China National Standard for Industry Classification. Both classification systems are 4-tiered. So the first 2 tiers, it pretty much match each other with no problem. And since getting, a bit of tricky, when you go further down the tier, so on the third tier, there are some sort of, mismatch. And a significant mismatching occurring on the 4th tier. So that makes it very difficult, because the a slight change to the allocation or for the to the different sectors would give you very different results, impact results. So that's something a big difficulty for us actually. And luckily we had assistance from our UNEP FI banking team, particularly Constanda Aguirre. Well, amazing lady, she knows impact analysis inside out. So we had a lot of calls with her, and so she helped us to go through the problems. We also make a proposal how to kind of like circumvent these difficulties. It's not a perfect solution, but it's something you can do given the current situation. So what next? We're trying to speak to our the government agency who make the national standard classification industry classification system, to see if we can harmonize the two systems as much as possible. I knew in other countries, for example, Japan, they managed to do that, and also in the ASEAN countries. In I think 2001, the ASEAN countries, they published technology for ASEAN taxonomy for sustainability finance, and that is based on the ASIC as well. So I strongly believe we can do the same thing, but that's a lot of gap to fill in. So those are the 2 major challenges, and how to do it appropriately, properly, that would have a big impact on the outcome. So that's the first challenge I'd like to say. Second challenge is how to interpret the result from the impact analysis. I'll give you example, the employment. So we use the impact analysis tool version 2. So now I think that version 3, the new latest version come out, are different. But with the version 2, there are 22 impact areas. So we, our portfolio, the impact of our portfolio across the 22 impact regions. Some impact in certain impact areas are difficult to interpret. Employment is one of them, because we find it has both. Our portfolio have both positive and negative impact, and the amplitude of that impact, both negative and positive, are roughly the same. So how to interpret that? What that means, whatever good thing you do or bad thing you do, it will give you the same result. We don't really understand that. So that's something we need to continue to look at. The third challenge would be, the actual mechanism that how by which the asset affect the impact areas is actually not very clear. So the impact analysis tool is like a black box. You plug in the numbers, ratios, and give you the result. But what's the exact mechanism happening there? We don't know, and we wish to find out more. And so I need to keep harassing Constanza so she can give me a bit more detail about that. But and she's been very honest with me that it takes a lot of effort, a lot of years, and a lot of money as well to develop this model. So some areas she also need to keep looking. So it's complex, but very useful. So I strongly encourage the PRB signatories, or even banks who are not yet signatory. You can use the tool to help you understand your impact, the impact on of your asset, of your portfolio. Yeah. Okay. Stop there.
Thank you so much, Shanning, and thank you, Mr. Ozawa. Absolutely, it is quite. As you mentioned, it is the holy grail of PRB, but it is a complex process. I think the other thing is also that even though PRB is a global framework, that it is important that the country contexts are taken into mind. But Karine, actually coming to you, Mr. Shanning and Mr. Ozawa talked a lot about what the impact analysis has been like. And so do you have anything else that you would like to reflect on this? But also please share with us why you think it's important for banks to be doing the impact analysis.
Thanks, Nirnita, and thanks for sharing, the good results and the challenges as well of that. So the role that I have, so just to put into perspective, at UNEP FI is to provide feedback and guidance to the banks that are PRB signatories. So we talk with every bank every year on the progress that they are making, looking to the requirements of the principles. I love the Holy Grail thing. But, the impact analysis is the first step, actually. So after you commit, the bank commit to align the portfolio, to deliver on the SDGs, to deliver on the Paris Agreement, you need to understand, actually, align with what? From what starting point? So that's why impact analysis is key, actually, because it provides a diagnosis for the bank to really deliver on the commitment made. So again, if you said, I'm going to align my portfolios, you need to understand what you have there. Where do you operate? What are the sectors that you finance or you facilitate, investments? Or, what are the key, and that's why it's important to look to the different countries, what are the key social environmental challenges that each of the countries that you operate have? And then when you look back to your portfolio, you need to think, okay, how is my action, my finance, helping to enhance and to promote a positive impact on these challenges that I have, or that are there in the countries, or the opposite? How am I contributing actually for this impact to get worsened? So I never used this metaphor with the banks, but I'll start using that, Nirnita, because okay, so I can say my commitment is I want to be healthier. Okay, so my commitment is I need to align, and I will align my portfolio with the SDGs. So this is my commitment. The first thing I do is go to the doctor and make exams, and make an analysis, a diagnosis. What are my index? What are my indicators, that I'll take into account to say if I'm healthier or not? And what are the, requirements actually to say, okay, I need to lose weight. What is the average that I should be at? So this is the alignment piece when we look to targets, right? What is my goal? Is my ambitions good enough, to really become a healthier person? And then what are the actions that I'm taking actually after that? So I think the impact analysis, again, is the starting point and to have this, diagnosis. And then I think on the challenges that you've also described, I think the first thing for me, and again, talking to more than 200 banks already, different regions, different sizes, different types of business. I think there's a very key element that we also discussed this morning, that is also the mindset and the understanding that it is not enough just to look to, for example, the sustainable finance portfolio. This is, as you said also, Shanning, this is extremely important, relevant. We need to drive capital, as we've discussed it this morning. But when we look from an impact perspective in a broader sense, we need to try to cover, the majority of the portfolio. So this is when the framework was established back in 2019, as you know, with also you as part of the core group and your bank. It is an ambitious framework that brings impact to the center. And it's not easy to understand, what does it mean from a strategic point of view? What does it require from the business and from the, the executives to understand? And something that I always discuss with the banks is, this is the time for you to make the hard questions, to make that uncomfortable questions that maybe, I don't know if I want to, to go deep on that. But I think the first challenge for me is really what's the mindset, understanding that it is a portfolio discussion, that is the time to make the hard questions as well. That is the time to, as you also said, to break it down to understand, okay, employment, what does it mean for my context? What are the key challenges? And I'm from Brazil, living in Europe. Unemployment or employment in Brazil has a different perspective as in China, as in Japan, for example, right? So I think first one is really mindset, and this is not minor. I think this is an important one. And then the other ones are really linked to what we've discussed in here, the correct data, what are the right indicators, what is the right data that I should use, and a lot of that was discussed also in the previous panels, so let's not make the, let's not wait for the perfect data, because again, if I know that I need to be healthier and I need to lose weight, I kind of know what I should do, even if I don't have the exact indicators that I should be looking at. So it's also, do not stop, so work progressively. Work with the data that you have, focus on the key sectors, the key challenges, the key countries that you operate. So I think, again, we don't have time, and we also saw, the biodiversity discussion here, we don't have time to wait for everything to be set and to be perfect. We need to start acting as well. So again, if you have the mindset, just use what you have, work progressively, and, really, really have these, hard discussions, I think, internally. So I'll stop here. So I can add later.
Thanks, Karine. I really like the idea of looking at impact assessment as a diagnostic tool. And I think it's also very important to keep in mind that by doing the impact assessment, you're looking at both your portfolio, but you're also looking at what the country's ambitions look like. And so you're able to bring both of them together. So actually, with that, coming to target setting then. So Mr. Ozawa, you mentioned that climate change is one of your bank's first key impact area. Can you walk us through your own climate journey? And yes, a similar question to Shanning, but first, Mr. Ozawa.
Thank you. With regard to the climate change, Mizuho has been implementing various initiatives over the past 20 years or so, since adopting the Equator Principles back in 2003. There are so many initiatives that has been implemented. However, key initiatives is going to be announcing approval of TCFD in 2017 and participating in the UNEP FI TCFD pilot program and initiating scenario analysis of transition and fiscal risks in 2019. Maybe 2020 was one of the big milestones for us, but Mizuho set a long-term target of sustainable finance and became the first Japanese financial institution group to issue the TCFD report. In fiscal year 2021, we qualified to convert our financing portfolio consistent with the Paris Agreement and set the Scope 1 and Scope 2 reduction targets. And last year, fiscal year 2022, we formulated Mizuho's approach to net zero in 2050 and also net zero transition plan. We revised our Scope 1 and Scope 2 targets ahead of original schedule, carbon neutral by fiscal year 2030, and started to set Scope 3 sector targets for fiscal year 2030. And as far as I know, we, Mizuho, became the first Japanese financial institution to disclose Scope 3, the financed emission, by 19 sectors based on TCFD. Through our scenario analysis of transition risks, Mizuho, or ourselves, affirms that the importance of the ordinary transition to a decarbonized society. We recognize that the engagement with our clients is the key for the orderly transition. We conduct engagement with our clients and support them in their transition by providing financial and non-financial solutions. And we believe that these efforts will contribute to the realization of the decarbonized society. Consulting and encouraging our clients to respond to the transition risks through engagement will lead to the strengthening the client's business competitiveness. It is really important for our customers to make a transition to decarbonization. However, the other important thing is to maintain or strengthen their business competitiveness. The transition of the real, and moreover, these kind of activities, business activities, will lead to our business expansion as well as the reduction of the transition risks. Most recently, April this year, just 2 months ago, we published the Sustainability Progress Report in our website and updated our net zero transition plan. There are 3 points in our revised net zero transition plan. First, we identified focused sustainable business areas. We identified important sector, promising advanced technologies, and we connect Japan and overseas, and we connect large corporates and SMEs and startups. Especially corporate clients in high emission sectors will need to transform their business structure or the business models. We, Mizuho, would like to fully support these clients' needs. Number two, second, is we dramatically increased our sustainable finance target from 25 trillion yen to 100 trillion yen by 2030 on an accumulated basis. We revised the target because the accumulated total amount by the end of fiscal year 2022, which is the end of March 2023, reached over 20 trillion yen. That's the reason why we revised the target. In last fiscal year, approximately 8 trillion yen arrangement has been done in a single year. From now on, we probably have to arrange approximately 10 trillion yen per year to achieve the target, which means the hurdle is not high, is not low. However, we intended to demonstrate our strong will to create money flow to support the massive investments required to realize the decarbonized society. Third is that we strengthened our risk management system, especially to tackle with the climate risk, related risks, mitigate, manage, and control the transition risks. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Ozawa. That's really interesting to hear Mizuho's strategy. I think just picking up 2 points that you've spoken about on Scope 3, we often hear Asian banks or even globally actually talk about the difficulty in looking at Scope 3 because of data challenges. And I think one of the very important key things that was discussed even today morning and which Karine also spoke about, that data challenges are there, but we should be starting with our journey at whatever point we are in. The other thing that I wanted to highlight from your strategy is client engagement. We do have a session today focused on how we could be specifically, or how banks are specifically looking at client engagement. But that brings me to the point on impact analysis assessment, and why that also is very important, and looking at which clients are important for you and how you should be engaging with those clients towards greening the economy. So thank you. So Mr. Shanning, I mean, obviously even for you, climate change is one of the impact areas that you're looking at. So could you explain what steps you've taken to address this impact area? And have you been able to design your short-term and long-term targets?
Right. We talk about climate target. Yes, we do. But our targets are financial target, not really impact target, which the UNEP FI had consistently require the signatories to make. So we are one step away from that impact target yet. But the financial target we make was made in after we have done our impact analysis. So we commit to to invest a certain amount of climate finance from through to 2025. So I would call it medium-term target. So we don't have long-term target, and the reason for that is because the China government, they have their climate commitment under the Paris Agreement, which is the carbon peak by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. But that hasn't translated into the finance sector, which means the central bank or the banking regulator, CBERG, they haven't really come up with a concrete plan, how the no carbon transition pathway looks like. So given that, it's quite difficult for individual bank to say, I would like, become net zero by a certain date. That probably also explains why there's no Chinese bank in the last bar and other, net zero initiatives so far. I think, you got to understand that because banking is heavily regulated in China. So that's planned. We don't really have a long-term target, but we do have a medium-term financial target by 2025. So what we have done, we look at how to realize our carbon commitment from both the asset perspective and the risk perspective. For the asset perspective, as I said, we have the financial sort of target. We're going to increase our carbon finance over the coming 3 or 4 years. Our funding target actually quite ambitious. We're planning to make a $28 billion carbon finance over the next 3 years. Also, given our total assets was only $460 billion, so that's, in my view, quite ambitious. And also, we publicly announced that the carbon loan, the growth rate of carbon loan will be no less than the growth rate of our total loan, and under that, the growth rate of renewable finance would be no less than the growth rate of the carbon finance. So, with this approach, we really making effort to mobilize the finance going to the climate friendly sectors. So that's from the asset point of view. So from the risk point of view, so we have done a couple of things. The first thing, we have done the climate risk stress test of our loan portfolios. We started in 2020, second half of 2021, under the coordination of China's Central Bank, PBOC. They derived the climate scenarios based on the NGFS 6 scenarios. So we have the official scenarios, and we use that scenario for our carbon risk stress test. So in second half of 2021, we covered only 3 sectors, which is power, steel, and cement. Last year, we extend that into 5 other sectors, including non-ferrous steel, non-ferrous metal, petrochemicals, aviation, etc. So in total, we have 8 sectors. We cover 8 sectors now, and these 8 sectors are actually those included in China's national carbon market. So that gives us quite a good foundation for us to understand, once the carbon policy kicked in, what effect will it have on our loan portfolio. We also integrate the carbon risk into our overall risk, a wider risk management framework. So initially we have, our framework cover 13 types of the risk, given like credit risk, market risk, things like that. But we include the environmental risk very recently, last year. So we published a risk management guideline. So it totally, climate risk is covered. It's included in the environmental risk, so it has been entirely integrated into our risk management framework. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Shanning. It's really interesting. I think one of the things that, obviously China has had a number of good policies on green growth that has come out. And it's also, I think, really highlights what you talked about, how important it is for financial institutions to also be ambitious in themselves. So,
yeah, can I just add one point regarding the impact target? As far as I know, I had a few discussions with our banking team experts. So the impact target actually, you have to demonstrate, the amount of reduction you have achieved over a certain point of time. I mean, there are 2 difficulties, online difficulties for banks to do that, for Chinese banks to do that. The firstly is that, in the China's 14th 5-year plan, there's no total cap target for carbon emission cap target. So the only carbon intensity target and the energy intensity target. So because there's no national carbon emission cap there, so it would be quite difficult for banks to come up with reduction amount of target, the quantitative amount of target. That's quite difficult. Secondly, the difficulty lies in the data. The gentleman talked about the Scope 3 emissions, how bank can calculate the Scope 3 emissions, which is really true. For green portfolios, we know how to calculate it because it's the emission, it's the it's quite easy, But for brown asset, or high emission asset, will be quite difficult because you don't really have data. You don't really have how much the energy for the fuel they have been used, things like that. So because of the data availability, is an issue, and the quality of data is quite poor. It's very hard for banks to come up with the emission reduction figures to understand what the scope 3 emission looks like. So there's still a lot of work to be done to have better access to the data, and banking sector alone or financial sector alone cannot do that. The government have to play an important role in that. You have to help the different departments, the ministries to talk to each other. You're trying to really make the data. The data are there, but the data are just not available to the financial sector on the whole. So a lot of work to be done there. Yeah.
Thank you. No, absolutely. I think the challenges regarding data in terms of both availability, accessibility, and once you even have the data, how to interpret it is something that we definitely hear a lot about. We do have sessions today and tomorrow looking at some of the things like stress testing, looking at the role of data, and we have some very excellent speakers whom I hope that we could work together. So as you said, it's obviously working with the government, but also among the institutions that are working on this, work together in terms of harmonizing of the data. So Karine, maybe the last question per se to you is, could you please highlight to us what are some of the common challenges that banks face when implementing impact measurement and target setting, and how do you think that they could be overcoming them?
Okay, so I'll go more for target setting now, because I think we've discussed a little bit on the impact analysis. So I think when we discuss, and for the ones that are here that are PRB members, it's a common definition for you. But I think for the others in the audience, the PRB requirements, within an initial period of 4 years, the bank should work to establish what we call the foundations, actually, to really, again, transform the portfolios, embed social environmental aspects into the bank's main strategy, and etc. So one of the requirements is that you need to understand your impact, so you need to perform an impact analysis. The tool is a tool, so it is built with the banks to help the banks to understand what are the different impacts in the different countries of operation, and et cetera, et cetera. But as we've discussed it, the important thing is also the mindset, the steps that you need to follow, the questions that you need to discuss within the bank strategically, with the board, with the executives in terms of the impact. So the first requirement within 4 years is that you understand the impacts that you are promoting, right? So this is the first one. And then within 4 years, the banks are expected to set at least 2 targets that are linked to the impacts that they identified and they measured, okay? And this is where the, one of the big challenges rely, because again, it's not any target, right? It needs to be a target that addresses the impacts that you've identified and you've measured, and I'll talk about climate. It needs to be a target that is aligned with, the global frameworks like the Paris Agreement, and the PRB banks are expected to align portfolio with a 1.5, degree scenario. It is, or the SDGs, or the local frameworks and the local indicators and national plans, for example. So when we discuss more like social topics as well, so when we look to financial health and inclusion, you of course have that in the SDGs, in the Sustainable Development Goals, but it's really much that So the other point is you need to align your targets. As I've mentioned, if I want to be healthier, I need to know what's the standard actually that I will need to to pursue, and and this will define my ambition. So I think there are different challenges here. So one is data, as we've discussed. The other day is how do we discuss with the business area what is the the benefit, how do we transform the business from a risk perspective and also from an opportunity perspective, so the target is meaningful in terms of impact, but also something that we've heard in the morning, also in terms of how does it, influence the bank's business as well. So I think there are different elements here, Nirnita, that we could cover, but mainly is that, again, the target is expected to really drive and to really, focus on the impact, and this is not an easy journey for the banks. I was in a bank myself for almost 20 years, and I know that every future statement, a long-term statement, is not an easy task, even if it's just a financial statement, right? So when we look to the other, like impact and etc., this is a challenge, I think, for the banks. I don't think we have time to cover climate here today, but yeah, but I think climate is the best example on, the mindset. So you know that financed emissions is your indicator. You need to measure that. You set a baseline, and you need to have a science-based scenario that will show that your target is ambitious enough to show that you are managing the impacts that you have in your portfolio.
Thanks, Karine. Yeah, I mean, as you said, we do not have too much time, so be just a closing statement from each one of you. If you could just highlight what advice would you like to give to banks who are planning to join the PRB or who have recently signed on to the PRB. So maybe, Mr. Shanning, if I could start with you.
Advice, wow. Okay, I think the internal governance is very important for PRB implementation because it's a long journey. 4 years we're talking about now, but the UKPFI are now looking beyond 4 years. We're talking about a new PRB, new version of PRB standard, which is PRB 2030. So it's a long journey. So you need a strong support internally for you to have, to embark on this journey. So you need to have a very good laid out internal structure to help you do that. You need strong support from leadership. You also need to an effective mechanism to mobilize your internal resources to help you along that journey.
So I fully agree. And then I would say, don't feel alone. I think we have today more than 300 banks that are, members of the PRB. It's a journey. It's not, we don't have all the answers. We are building that together with the banks. But I think the important thing is, as we've discussed in the morning, it's a systemic change. So we need, we need more banks to join. We need collaboration between, the banks also to discuss the challenges, the methodologies. So don't feel alone. UNEP will, is also here to support you, but also, and in Asia, a large group of banks that is also, going to the same journey.
Well, it's really difficult question, but it is very important for the banks to consider who we are, what we are doing, the purpose of the company, or maybe the purpose of the banks. It's a substantial mission to have an impact to the society, economy, and environment. So that could be one of the trigger to consider about joining this kind of principles. Thank you.
Thank you, all three of you. Sorry. I think you've summarized it very well enough for me, but the 3 takeaways that I think I would like to take from here is that this is a journey, and banks at any point of their journey are welcome to join the PRBs. There is a real need to look at impact assessment, whether you're a part of the PRB or not. It is important, if you are looking at sustainable finance, to look at impact assessment, because that will enable you to understand what sustainable finance would even mean for your banks. And as we spoke about, there are still obviously many challenges that exist, and we hope that we can work together with all of you in terms of working towards overcoming those challenges. As Karine mentioned, UNEP is obviously there to provide as much support that we can to all our banks in the region and obviously globally. Today and tomorrow, we have a number of sessions that would be beneficial for all financial institutions, regardless of whichever phase you are in your sustainability journey. Just also to highlight that we are also organizing a number of online programs to facilitate capacity building on impact and target setting, and also an energy efficiency in the coming weeks. So if you're a PRB bank and would like to register for this, do let us know. Let me know, or otherwise please see on our website. If you're a PRB bank, you'll be able to register very easily. And with that, once again, thank you so much to all our panelists, and thank you to all of you for being a part of this session today. Really nice.